On today's podcast episode, I want to wrestle through a question that I actually submitted based off of your talk this last weekend. This last weekend, you talked about Elijah calling Elisha, and he showed up, it's at the end or towards the middle of the end of chapter 19 of 1 Kings. God says, Elijah, go find Elisha and have him be the next guy. You're going to anoint him to be the next prophet of God. And so here's my question is, based off of the story, Elijah goes up and says, hey, Elisha, come with me. And he disrupts everything from what Elisha was currently doing. He was a farmer. He was doing this, and he drops everything and goes. And so the question is, how do I know when to say yes to when God disrupts my life? Like, I guess, and so it's like a wisdom wing. How do I know that this disruption is actually God saying, come do this? Does that make sense?
Because there's no question. I mean, how do I know when is God doing it? And once I do, how do I know how to do it, right?
Yeah.
So there's those things. And then within, I know people that, I know some folks that have jumped from thing to thing to thing to thing over and over and over again, right? Actually, there's a tool I use, and you've seen this before with me. This little tool I use, a square. I talk about how we move around it, and the first phase is really simple. It's fun. We just do what we're told. It's exciting. We don't know yet. The next one's really hard, and it takes some coaching to get through it. We got to work through some things, and then we get to we get to collaborate a little bit, and then get commissioned to go. But what we do is we kind of loop the top part over and over again because it's fun. It's hard. It's a new fun thing. It's a hard thing. It's a new fun thing. It's a hard thing. Over and over and over again. And so how do we know, back to the question, when it's God saying do this and when it's just an idea?
And I want to say this, the reason why I'm asking this is because, like you just said, it's fun, then it's hard. We have a tendency to short circuit ourselves in the hard part. And because we do, we think, oh, it's a disruption. Because it's no longer fun, it's a disruption. So maybe God's telling me to do this now, when actually God's not. So how do I know when God is actually disrupting, actually calling me to something else, and so I can say yes to it and walk into it?
And we need to acknowledge that this conversation is longer than we have time for right now fully. There are nuances to this and things that you might, at the end of this, say, but you didn't answer my question. And if that's true, ask it. We want to follow up conversations for this. But
absolutely,
let me tell you a little story here of me. I'm in the middle of the story. When I was living in another state, and I was in a ministry that I loved, I loved the church, loved the community, deeply loved the town, loved the people that were there. I intended to be there until the day that I died. And then I started having this church where I currently am serving start to call and say, Adam, why don't you consider coming here and join our staff and preaching here? And my answer immediately, without hesitation, was absolutely no. And then they were surprised, and I explained, I'm not going back. I'd been here before. I'm not going back there. I'm staying where I am, happy where I am. Well, this church was undeterred. They called back again and again, and no, over and over and over again, until finally one night, my wife says to me, she says, do you think maybe God's trying to do something and you keep telling him no? Because we prayed, she and I did that God would open doors and do things and use our family, and maybe God's trying to do what you're asking him to do and you're telling him no. And so I hesitantly said that I would answer maybe the next time they called, but they won't call back. Because I've been really clear. The next day they called, and I said maybe, and then we began to walk through a process where we began to pray through it and to look at it and to see what was going on, because this was a massive disruption to our lives. Our son was 10. He was in a school. He loved his friends. He loved sports teams he was on, all these little things, and we were going to leave our community that we'd built over a decade plus of time and leave and move on. And so we prayed about this and worked through this, and I'm not going to say that we did the Gideon thing in the Old Testament. We didn't put fleeces out and say, if God does this, then we'll do that. But we began to pray that God would make it very clear to us that everything that we perceived God saying to us would align with his word and what he commissioned us to do and to be, which were people that spread his kingdom, pointed to his glory, multiplied ourselves, created families, and all this. We prayed that this would be that God would provide along the way. And every step of the way, God did the things we were asking him to do. Not as ultimatums, but as, Father, if you're leading us, lead us. And we were asking him to do so, to the point where my wife actually had a job in this town before I did officially. And he provided for that. There was one prayer that we had. He provided for our son, for schooling, for things that were going on. All this came together to where it was very obvious that God was calling us to step through the door. Now, when we did, it was really hard. because it involved us stepping away from things we loved. Disruption. Elisha in the story, I mean, he kills the animals, he burns the plows. I mean, he leaves it behind.
He's not going back.
And for us, we didn't burn it to the ground, but we got in a U-Haul and left town, right? And took all our stuff with us and moved on. And it's hard. How do you know when it's God talking? I think it's through a process of prayer and reading His Word and speaking to Him, listening for Him. If you're praying about it and you're asking God to be clear, not as ultimatums, but as a father who leads. If you're going to lead, then lead. And you're listening for that, and you're not trying to skew it along the way, because it's possible we skew it along the way. I can say, God, if you're leading, then I'm praying that you would provide, in my case, for my wife to have a job too, because she wants a way to contribute into the kingdom and be part of things too. So would you provide for that? And then, whatever happens, I'm like, well, it probably wasn't what. You can't skew it like that.
Can't make excuses.
If you talk to God and you watch for Him to move, you got to watch for Him to move. But then when He does move, you've got to take a step.
Yeah.
You can't stall. You got to move.
And can I add one more thing?
Yeah, go for it.
So that I think even through that whole process, because I know your story, is there was also a few people older than you in your life that you trusted their wisdom, that you were also saying, hey, we were praying about this and this. And you're not in this bubble. You're not in this moment, and you have a step outside of it. Are we being crazy?
Yeah.
Do you see God's hand in this too? And I think we start with prayer, because everything we do starts with Jesus. We read His Word. We wait on Him to show us answers. We ask for Him to be specific, so that way we know it's not us doing it. But then when we feel like all these things are happening, we do one more thing. We ask in wisdom, hey, someone who's not tied to the situation, someone who's not doing this, but you know me and you know us and you know God, and we trust you and your faithfulness with Him. Are you seeing this too?
Yeah.
And I think if all those things collide, then you got to do it.
You got to do it. And there's been times you come to me with that same thing. You're like, God, saying this, we think, what do you think? And so we talk about it. And because that discussion, that community is part of it as well. That's why we surround ourselves with God's people, so we can move in God's will. Now, the thing is, though, we have to be ready to do whatever God calls us to be a part of it to do, right?
Yeah.
We can't get to the very end and say, never mind, God. We got to be faithful to move. He's being faithful to move in us as well. We got to do those steps, right?
Yeah. So whatever you're struggling with, if you feel like God is tapping you on the shoulder and He's disrupting your life or perceiving that, and you've been trying to follow these steps and you're still kind of struggling, reach out to us. We'd love to help you along the way, taking next steps, because God does have things He wants you to do. And He calls you to do them, and we want to make sure we help you along the way in doing that. So if you have questions, or maybe if we didn't answer your question fully, like Adam was talking about, reach out to us. We'd love to help you with that. But as always, church, until we see each other again, you are sent. Have a great day.